I think what we're going to talk about today is a topic that can be painful when we think about our larger ambitions, whether for art, business, art business, or anything like that. But I think it's also essential if our real goal is about impacting people's lives. It's about understanding the importance of the focus on a single individual versus focusing on the full auditorium or the masses or the million view video, things like that. So let's talk a little bit more about why. Welcome back to Arts and Offers. This is about the intersection between art, poetry, and business. My name is Geoff.
I'm Matthias.
Hi.
How's it going, man?
It's going okay. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I think. Okay, wait. Is this the first podcast since your birthday, right?
It is. Yes.
Yeah,
I had a birthday.
Jeff's birthday.
It was.
It was Jeff's birthday. It's no longer Jeff's birthday, but It was Jeff's birthday. August 1st, man. How do you feel?
I talk like this now. No, no, I feel it's fine.
It's fine?
Yeah, I feel like every birthday after like 25 kind of all starts feeling the same. Not gonna lie.
Now I'm just an ageless being.
I'm 24 years old. This is what
I feel like one of the things that I feel like I'm learning to do on my birthdays, and like I think it's because really in part it's actually kind of in part your fault, but also Ajane and everybody. It's just like really just thinking about like the year, thinking about like things that I've and being able to really kind of reflect. And be like, this is like the era that I'm in now, and like kind of the window of time. Like, what era do you feel like you're in now?
Definitely still building. This is not we are not in reap period. We are still very much sowing.
Yeah, but that's good because I feel like that is also something that's really hard for people to distinguish in real time and really be able to understand in real time. And I think if you can understand it, you can also kind of guide it and control it. I think a lot of people, they're in a window, they're in that building period, but they're impatient. So because they can't recognize that they're still building, there's still parts of the infrastructure that there needs to be a foundation for, they get impatient and then they tap out and they're like, yeah, this isn't, maybe this isn't going anywhere. Or they get super experimental with something else over here as opposed to focusing. So yeah, being able to like acknowledge that and know that like, the thing that I'm working for is happening in the future somewhere, I think it's really good.
I think it's also challenging because I think with especially social media doesn't actually allow us to live in the present. It's very much about living in other people's present. But the problem with that is other people's presents are very often our future without the gap. Especially the people that we pay attention to. The people that are like winning the awards that we want to win. Mm-hmm. Or that are getting the views on videos that we want to get. Or they're having the level of interaction and engagement that we want to get. We're seeing their present and associating our own present with that. And also, I think we're seeing where they are in the journey, but not understanding the steps that it took for them to get where we are.
Yeah, and I think it's also difficult because especially if you're in community with people, sometimes like you start comparing, not only what you're doing and the efforts that you're taking, but also like whatever incremental impact that you believe is happening with your work, and you start comparing that with other people's work and what other people are doing. And a lot of times, I was actually talking to a really dope artist, Kaleem. And if you're, I mean, I don't know, just incredible lyricist and just incredible instructor in the community, like with the youth, as well as just community partner in like different projects and things like that. But one of the things we're talking about is, a lot of times we don't see the consistency that somebody else had to have in order to be who they are. We just see, a lot of the structures that are kind of coming up to support them and help them and around them. But I'm like, yeah, some somebody that you're trying to compete with, or that you think that you're trying to compete with, that person was foregoing meals sometime in order to really lock in with what they're creating, or they had sleepless nights because they were just like writing, or they were like building something. And we don't really see that part, because like, even if we're in close community, we don't really see that part. We just see later on when you're like, man, but I feel like I do this, I feel like I do this, like, why don't I get this? And so I just think it's really cool to be like, I mean, also, I mean, namely, you know, naturally, you are a person that is like one of the hardest workers that I know. And so it's also like this, like, people are seeing what you're building here, and a lot of times those people might be thinking like, man, but you know, like, why is my work, or what I'm doing, not being built kind of at that same speed? So like, you're Speedy Gonzalez to some people, you know what I mean? Like, there's somebody out there that's seeing the things that you're doing, and they view it as reaping, you know what I mean? They view this as the thing. But I'm like, yeah, because you view the, you know, 3 years, 5 years into the future as what the real reaping process will be. It's like, sometimes it can feel slow to you in real time, but yeah, somebody out there is thinking like, oh man, like, look at how amazing the things that he's building are, which is true.
Yeah. I mean, you always have something that someone else wants. And I think also, I mean, no journeys are exactly the same, right? Because some people are, I think, understanding that in people's journeys, everyone's on their own track, and some people are also like, the path we're on isn't even the same track at all.
Yeah.
You know, it might be going in the same direction, but your path has a curve there, and I didn't have a curve there, and things like that. You know, and some people, even if you put in the same amount of work, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the same result, and it's not fair. But that actually, I think, in some ways works to our advantage. If it's all about mindset, how you view it, you can get upset about it, or you can view it as, this is going to allow me to learn things that maybe other people aren't going to experience.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be people that get the windfall, you know, that somehow end up with the check that allows them to get the equipment, you know, or get the space. You know, there's going to be some people that have the family that supports them, or the community network, you know, and cool. And I think the big thing is just not being resentful about that, because I think resentful comes from a place of expectation and assumption, when there are no, we're not guaranteed anything.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I think what you're saying there is like important too, because it's like, a lot of the times the struggles that you come up against make you really uniquely suitable to speak to an audience that might have some similar struggles, or might have went through similar like setbacks. And a lot of times we're so focused on the resentment that we feel from going through those things, that we're not thinking of like what that makes us uniquely able to communicate to people. And like, that's like the thing that might be the thing that, you know, somebody else, even though they feel like, you feel like they had like, you know, rocket fuel, like going and like through their journey, they might not be able to really suitably speak to kind of some people that went through some of the things that you did. So yeah, I think trying to look at everything like everything is a part of your journey, and because everything is a part of your journey, like, how do I communicate everything? How do I talk about everything? How do I push everything to a lesson space, as opposed to a, oh, finally I'm past that so I can forget about it? Like, no, like, let's think about it. Like, what issues did you have in trying to get your first poem published, if that was your goal, right? So maybe you had a whole bunch of setbacks that now you can communicate really clearly what those setbacks were in hindsight, or like what those setbacks are. So, and I think that just works for several dimensions of creative like building.
I think this leads into our discussion too, because I think a lot of times those comparisons, once again, take us out of the present. And the present might be that you have one person in front of you that wants what you're offering, but you're too busy looking over their shoulder at all the empty seats around them, you know. But what if we dedicate all of that energy that normally would have gone to resentment, frustration, and instead channeled it into how can I create the most wholesome experience for this person right here? Because I think one of the things you see with, I think in the, we'll just kind of focus on the art community. Like, I think one of the things you see is that there's attention to one person over and over and over and over again, you know, and about, can I get one more person to read my book? Can I get one more person to read the poem I wrote? And waking up tomorrow with that same mindset over and over again. In business, I'm thinking to my teaching business. So I have a coaching program, a couple coaching programs, like group coaching. And I had to make a new group coaching program because people want to leave. It's small. Like, it's like there's like 5 regulars I see in the morning and then 5 different regulars I have in the evenings. And if I had gone in with the mindset that, you know, I need like thousands, that, you know, I really would have missed out. Like, I'm able to give to those, you know, 5 people in the morning, like, an experience that's so meaningful for them that they wanted to stick with me. I think the average length of time in the group now is probably like a year to a year and a half, you know, and there's people in the group that have been in since its conception like 3 years ago, you know. That there's a lot of value. Like, one person, if you give them a powerful enough experience over time, maybe someone that wants to stick with you for decades.
Yeah, and I think there's like I think since the advent of virality, right? Like, people are, a lot of times people are hunting after that, right? So like they can't really conceptualize like, hey, I have a poetry video that I made, and this poetry video, while I'm working on the poetry videos, like, this poetry video might have 10 views today, but if I keep pushing myself and putting myself out there as an artist and keep like working on myself as an artist and keep, whenever I see somebody, I'm talking about my art and I'm saying, hey, I got this video up on this platform or on my platform or whatever the case may be. Like that might grow and it might reach the right people. And I think, you know, because of the advent of virality, we want to go from 0 to 10 million like overnight. And that's like such a rare, not only is that such a rare thing to happen, but it's even rare that it's like your first time out there, you're getting this huge influx of viewers or followers or whatever the case may be. So much more of it is about, like, you know, are you able to connect with 1 or 2 people now that you can connect with, like, people in the future, and like consistently do that.
Well, like, why do you want those numbers in the first place? Like, let's say you put a video out and you're like, I want 1 million views on this. Why do you want 1 million views? What's the 1 million views doing? I think a lot of us were putting, some of it's just the external validation, right? It's just that 1 million people view this, that validates me in what I'm doing. That makes me feel like what I'm doing is a success, right?
Yeah.
Another view might be from a business perspective. It's like, well, if I reach 1 million people, there's a greater chance that I'll be able to create an income around that.
Yeah.
And yet, 5 people might be enough to give you all you need to survive on, you know?
Not only that, but like, you'd be, I wouldn't even say shocked. Like, I think a lot of people might be surprised by how many people that have millions of views on their video that have not figured out a way to translate that into like a soluble business, something that they can like really organize behind and push. And then there's people that, you know, that you like, they got tens of thousands of views, but they are flourishing in their business. And I just think that there's there is a gap in that knowledge because people are chasing the wrong things, like exactly what you said. Like they're thinking, hey, if I get 1 million views, that means that I now have the
A
money
million customers.
like,
It's not.
that's not. It's a lot of times it's not the case. A lot of times the people that you're going viral behind are not people that are looking to spend money or time or like anything other like considerable around your product. If you're even set up to have a product right then, a lot of times people are going viral before they have the rest of the infrastructure in place to do anything with that virality.
Going viral at the wrong moment is catastrophic. You have nothing in place for people to come back to. Yeah, you don't. There's people out there that they have a product that they sell for. It's one product that they sell for like. Let's do a real concrete example. Let's talk about like mattress stores. Because sometimes people look at mattress stores and like, how does this place stay in business? Every time I look at them, they're empty. No one's there. They always have a sale going on. Like, how does a mattress store stay open? But when you think about a mattress store, so they have to lease the space. So the space is what? Maybe like $1,000, $1,500 a month, maybe.
Yeah.
Mattresses are selling for $900, $1,500, $2,000. You have to pay your overhead, but so how many mattresses do I need to sell a month? 2, 3. If it's me,
Yeah, if it's just like if it's maybe like you and like one other worker, maybe.
But like
help runs the shop.
Like the reality, like I don't need to sell. Same thing with like car dealers. Like you don't necessarily need to sell a ton to stay solvent, right?
Well, also, I mean, for mattress dealers, because you're buying the mattresses. Unless you're making the mattresses, which a lot of times is not happening. But if you're just like a seller, like you're buying. But even with that, it's like
you don't need to sell like 100 mattresses a month.
Yeah.
Right. You basically need to find one family that's moving into town a month. Probably because most people are, if they're buying, a lot of people are buying mattresses when they sell a house or when they buy a new house. And if they have kids. So I'm buying a new mattress for the couple and the kids that they have.
Yeah.
So if I can find one family a month, I might be able to be okay.
Yeah. And like especially if you can kind of get into like a growing town, you know what I mean? Like something that like has like some development and stuff like that. Like a lot of times like those mattress dealers are working specifically with like apartment complexes and stuff like that, and that way they can be like, it comes with the furnishing, and now you have that.
So if I, just focus on trying to meet one family a month that I know is moving into town and like really establish a relationship with them, they can change things.
And not only can it, I even think about like further down the line, because now it's like that family is now a referral point for other families like them.
If I give them the right experience. Conversely, if I give them the wrong experience, well, it's the same effect, just in the opposite direction, right? Because they're going to tell people, stay away. Don't go, it has the, so this is why it's very easy to lose sight of like the individual from the masses, but the individual, if you give that one really remarkable experience, when I say remarkable, I'm using again like Seth Godin's definition, where it's like able to generate a remark. It's not good enough just to be very good. We have to give an experience that people are willing to talk about with others. If I can give that experience, which is done through, I think, really intense, focused, almost like obsession on the individual, that increases my chances of them having an experience that they would want to share with others.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, and I want to hear maybe like some of the stuff that maybe helps you with that process, especially because I think that like you have like your connection to that naturally is like flourishing, right? I think one of the things that helps me is, I think really in the work itself going forward, right? So it's like so much, a lot of my work is so specific. Like I'm focusing in on something like very, very specific that I know that it might miss everybody in the audience. Like people in the audience might enjoy it, but it might miss like the details of it might miss everybody except for like two people. And those two people will come up to me after the show and they'll be like, "Oh my god, and I got this," and like we're having like a really deep conversation. And if I had a book out at the time, like it would have been a perfect time to be like, oh, like, you know, I have this book that kind of goes deeper into some of that stuff. Yeah. And I think that when, again, a lot of people, they're writing kind of incredibly generally, and it's not hitting anybody hard because it's trying to touch everything. And so like that's kind of the thing that, like, from an artwork perspective, that I implement. That way I can be like, you know, also I'm writing things that are important to me, and if you're writing things that are important to you, then they should be specific too. But I don't know, what about for you? Because I feel like for you, not only running the stanza here, but then also, you know, having your own work out in the world, like, you know, how do you really like hone in and like try to get in touch with like the individual?
I think that trying to identify like this specific person that you're going after, and a lot of times that specific person is often in some relation to yourself, because you know yourself best, you know, and understanding that if you like this one thing, other people probably are going to like this one thing as well. So leaning into that as much as possible. For instance, I mean, even with like pick the thing that you're willing to work towards for as long as it takes. And that's hard because you have to make a choice, right? And people they want to be able to do everything and anything. But and I'm not saying that you can't, but I'm saying for a period of time we narrowing down. So for instance, like with the verses, you know, everything's about trying to approach art from a perspective of living with creative and financial independence. We had a workshop a couple days ago, part of a new online series called Craft Right, and our workshop leader was Penda. And before the workshop, Penda was like, "Okay, so who's funding this?" I was like, "I'm funding this." She's like, "There's no grant." Like, no, it's against the mission. Yeah. What's the mission? What's the purpose? People want to align with a purpose. Yeah. I think this gets to the question is, once you understand what your purpose is, everything becomes so much clearer. Because everything either becomes for the purpose or against the purpose.
Yeah.
And if something's against the purpose, then why would I do it?
Yeah. I think that's like, it's transformation. I think it's like transformational to you as a person too. Cause like it'll, because you're kind of seeing the world now in like very monochromatic like ideas, right? So like there's an idea that comes to you, and the idea automatically is black and white. The idea is automatically, hey, what does this thing do to my mission and my goals? And it also kind of requires the kind of person that would stick to a purpose if given a hard decision, right? So I think about, you know, if somebody was just like, well, if I'm not in music to make money, I'm in music to create work that is beneficial to my community and upbuilding my community. So if you are that kind of person and you're like, I am a musician for the rest of my life, this is the kind of music that I make. And then some record company says, hey, we want to sign you. But in signing you, just know you can never make anything positive and upbuilding. Actually, it has to just be about these three things, and these three things are horrible to your community or whatever. Like now, it's like, if you are a person that is purpose driven, you've already determined your purpose. You know that's a road that sounds enticing, but it's against your purpose. But if there are people that, you know, naturally they'll come across that roadblock and they'll be like, oh, but I'm making money? Okay, well, I'll make whatever permissions that I have to make for the purpose. And I think about like like I did an interview with Mickey Fax over the weekend, and it was so interesting because like he was like he got like the double XL cover, and when he first got the cover, it was like at a really kind of tumultuous time for him, because he was homeless, and he was like figuring out food here and there. He was pushing himself rap. So like think about that. Think about like he was so dedicated to being like art. Rapping is my passion. It is what I do for my life. So like even when I'm hungry and I'm homeless, like that is the thing that's a constant. I am doing that. I am going to open mics. I am going to shows. I am doing this in order to like kind of push himself, which is like, again, something that's like incredibly like you're sticking to your purpose. You're saying like, hey, no matter what else is going on around me, like I'm going to effectively be pushing my purpose. And then he was like, yeah, by the time when I got it, it was like that was when things started happening for him. But I'm like, yeah, are you the kind of person that could be going through a time like that and still maintain focus on your purpose? It's tough to do. Mm-hmm. Like it's definitely tough to do. But I think also the thing that does is it connects him to people that are in line with his purpose. So like now there's people like that have been fans of him for 20 something years. You know what I mean? And you know, I think it's really hard to like kind of imagine, you know, like everybody wants to be Jay-Z, right? Everybody wants to be like Beyonce or like these like artists that have this like huge, like almost innumerable following, right? And I'm not saying that's out of reach for everybody, but I think that like in order to be that person, you have to be willing to be the person that is pushing themselves towards their purpose regardless of the obstacles.
I wonder things that like, you know, once you start getting closer to your goals, you can then expand to other, because you might feel very restricted, but like look at like Beyonce getting big because of like pop music, and then once
a big Beyonce fan,
huge. I'm in the Beehive. Once she reaches a point though, then she can branch out. Then she can make the country album. She can't make the country album. It becomes much more challenging to make the country album 20 years ago. Yeah, it becomes much more difficult to make that. But now, as you expand, then you can start opening up to other areas that you're like, man, I want to include this. But right now it's not quite in alignment with the thing. But then you can reach a point later. But I wanted to speak to talking about your friend and like going through his purpose, and it attracts other people who see it, and it also repels other people too. You know, because there's gotta be, like I think whatever we're creating, I think we need to be trying to avoid objective to a degree. Like we want to lean into generating emotion from people, like immediately. Like removing the rational and leading more into the emotional, because that's how people very often make a lot of their decisions, and then they try to rationalize why they make their decisions. But I think a lot of times it starts from an emotional place. For instance, there's a new coffee shop downtown, close to Black Kahawa actually.
Is that one right around the corner?
It's the one, if I'm like facing north on High and Broad and I go right, it's on the corner by like the Key Bank, and it's called Restoration Coffee. And one of the things is, if you go to their website, they are hardcore about faith and like believing that, like, you know, going in on like the need for Jesus and things like that, which they put right onto their homepage on their website. Yeah, that's going to turn a lot of people off. That's going to make a lot of people suspicious and be like, you know, no, I'm not. Why would I get coffee and faith? I just want coffee. You know. So, but conversely, that's also going to turn some people. Some people are going like, yes, a business that finally embraces its faith. I like that. Yeah. We almost want. There's an immediate emotional repulsion or attraction, and I think that when we're determining what our purpose is, I think that's something that we want to lean into. the verses is leaning into a negative reaction towards arts, nonprofits, academia. Like, I want the nonprofit sector to be afraid of me disrupting them.
Yeah.
You know, and that is going to put a lot of artists in conflict because they're like, I want the grants and stuff like that, you know. But it's also going to empower some poets who are like, ooh, maybe there is another way to handle this.
Yeah.
You know,
very important. There's also like I think there's an attraction to, like, between people that like have purpose as well. So I think that, like, one of the things that I realized that, like, once you really start pushing yourself in one direction, you realize, like,
keep going.
There's not a ton of people that are doing that, right? There's not a ton of people that are so purpose driven that, you know, they're foregoing other opportunities because of the fact that, like, their purpose kind of drives them in one direction. And I think you start finding community with other purpose driven, like, people. And I think that's, like, kind of in a lot of ways, like, it is the thing that Diverses does really intentionally, right? So it's like, there is this, hey, we're not going to go for grants. We're not going to go for, like, these opportunities that are just, like, handed to us, as opposed to creating opportunities, like, within kind of its own kind of sector, almost, in a way. And then people that are signing on to the mission are doing the same. And the more people are growing, almost kind of in the same way that a lot of times, like, a fan base might be like, you know, if I've been a fan of this artist for 10 years, then I have the luxury of, like, I know his first album front to back and his mixtapes before that and things like that. Whereas somebody that's new, they might only have some of the new work kind of committed to memory and, like, kind of understand, like, their walk and stuff like that. Whereas, like, you know, with something like Diverses, it's like somebody's like, yeah, my first year kind of going to Diverses events and, like, getting some of, like some of the workshops and stuff like that, I was just kind of discovering who I could be as an artist that wasn't dependent on like grants and things like that. And then now my third or fourth year, I've been doing it for 4 years, and, you know, I'm just, like, we're consistently meeting, and, like, now we're peers. Now we're like, oh, like, you know, I found this opportunity space that's not a grant. It's there's a new coffee shop over here, and because this coffee shop opened up, and that coffee shop, like, let's say like Restoration Coffee, right? So, like, let's say, like, there's a poet who is all about faith. That the only thing they talk about is their faith. Now that poet's like, hey, I just heard about this coffee shop, and I pitched them on allowing me to have an open mic around faith, and I'm selling my book there. So, like, now you have artists that are kind of restructuring their thinking, and it's because of, like, maybe how long they've been, you know, working with Diverses or working with the concept behind what Diverses is doing.
So I think once you have the purpose in mind and the people who that purpose aligns with, it changes everything. It changes, if you're, in our case, it changes the programming you offer, the sorts of events that you offer. It changes the vocabulary. Like, when you're describing what you're doing to people, the words you use might change. If I'm targeting kids, then the vocab I'm using has to be at a certain register and under. If I go too high, kids aren't going to, you know, pay any attention to it. You know, it's going to affect your color choices. It's going to determine the event that you run. It's going to determine what your website looks like. It's going to determine the next group that you create, what that looks like. So this is why, and if I focus too much on a large group of people, it's hard to individualize that, because you start getting too many people, and, you know, people have, you know, myriad interests. So you start seeing too general, too sanitized. Whereas if you're like, no, this specific group of people, like, imagine, like, I wanted to make a poet group for 50-year-old runners. You know, that's going to determine the logo I use. That's going to determine the time that we run. That's going to determine the location. That's going to determine you know, if we have like food, or like that's going to determine what kind of food we have. You know, all these things
Yeah.
start being considered just because I thought about the one specific person who would attend this.
100%. Oh, and one other thing that I was like also thinking about, like even with like this example that you just used, is like that the people that are attracted initially, like there's like waves of people that like kind of become like your fan. I don't want to say fan base. That's wrong, but become like collaborators and co-laborers, like in a lot of like the missions that like that you set upon. Because like this, there's going to be an initial wave that if my target audience is 50-year-old, if my target audience is like 50-year-old runners, but I'm saying that like I would accept people that are older or people that are younger, but I'm making accommodations for and specifically communicating to these people, right? If I like, let's say like you're the greater swath of the people that are like really like leaning into your mission are going to be like the people that you're communicating directly to. But you know, over time, people are going to be able to identify with different parts of your mission and still want to sign on or still support in other ways if they can't even support directly. I even think about that when it comes to like the example with like Restoration Coffee. Like if somebody's like, yeah, I am super on board because this is a faith mission type thing, and this is cool, and I really want to be involved because of that. There's like other people that are, I don't know, because you said it's faith, so it's like Jesus, like it's Christian. But like there's other people that get involved with like Christian initiatives for reasons that are outside of whether or not Christianity is their faith, right? So they could be like, oh, but they are, I don't know, generous, you know what I mean? And because they're generous, I want to like partner with them in their generosity and things like that. So there's other vectors for people to be able to grow that base and like that the collaborator base without taking them off of their mission. Because like restoration, they don't have to be like, well, oh, like you want to join with me, but you are like anti-Christian. Like, oh, I appreciate it, but that's not, you know, like that's not the direction we want to go. And I think that like being able to recognize things like that is like important to like mission based work, but it's also important to be able to be like, hey, like I have a very strong mission that has other tentacles that, you know, as long as you're not pushing me away from my mission, then I'm happy for you to support in other ways. Because, you know, because you talked about this a little bit too, even when it comes to diverses. Like there's people that, like you're not, there's a push to get completely free of like these grants and stuff like that. But because everything has been so reliant on grants, it's like maybe for some people it's just a matter of being less reliant on them. You know what I mean? Now don't base your entire career and your livelihood and your movement and even your projects on whether or not there's a grant for it. Now you're pushing to have them complete yourself, and if something comes along, it's like great. I'll take advantage of things as they come along, but not making everything super dependent.
Yeah. So I think that if you're a poet or artist, think about like where to start. So some things we talked about before and also today. I think the first way to start getting focused on that individual is, one, again, think about the purpose and the specific thing you want to do. And we've talked about before this concept of like poetry and something. So for instance, in the versus case, it's poetry and business. We're trying to make that link. Everything we do is with that in mind. Your poetry and could be poetry and pet adoption. Your poetry and could be poetry and working out. You know, whatever it is. But what are the things that you want to focus on? Because that already starts individualizing it. Because there's a lot of poets out there, but there may be that group of like poet and pet adoption. That's not, you know, I think in general people like the idea of pet adoption, but not everyone's going to go hardcore advocating for pet adoption, right?
Yeah.
So you want to target that specific person. So starting off with that, so that's going to be kind of the framework to build on, and then kind of asking yourself, you know, what's the age group I want to target with this? So for instance, poetry and business for diverses, targeting adults, you know, there's a lot of, I think when a lot of poets think about like poet organizations, they think educating schools in literacy and stuff like that, which is great. That's a huge goal. I'm not passionate about that, you know. And fortunately, there are lots of other people who are. So great, that's good for schools. That's not me. I'm focused on like adult learning, you know. So there's that. Focusing on, for instance, where do people live? And when you know where people live, you also know, for instance, what's their income and things like that. You know, so that's because that might determine the types of events that you do, or supplies that you do, or those things. In addition to that, you want to be thinking about why are the people interested in the thing. So, like, for instance, if people are interested in poetry and pet adoption, why are they interested in pet adoption? Is it because maybe they grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of strays? Is it because maybe they grew up in a household that like abused animals? You know, I know, for instance, in the neighborhood I grew up in, there's a lot of like dog fighting rings and stuff like that. You know,
What?
Yeah, facts. Yeah,
New information.
I was terrified.
I had to fight a dog once.
No, man, all the dogs are like not like Rottweilers, pit bulls, stuff like that. That's why I'm not really a big dog person. Yeah,
new information.
Yeah.
You have a dog.
Yeah, but our dog's a cat, and one. I'm trying to stay married.
Fair enough. All right.
Okay. You know, whatever. Like, the more you can understand the reasons why people are doing the thing. Why are they? If you're doing poetry and pet adoption, why are people interested in pet adoption? What's their relationship with animals? What specific animal? There might be more cat people than dog people, so it's not just like pet adoption. It's cat adoption. You're big on the cats, you know. Yeah. And so the more you can lean into that specific individual person, then you can start seeing them and being like, oh, they would certainly like to do this. Or if we're thinking from a business perspective, which is probably why you're here, think about what's a problem that they have, and then how can you use poetry to solve it. So for instance, maybe the problem is, if we're going on like the pet adoption thing, so maybe I'm really into poetry and cat adoption. I want to save cats. So I want to be thinking about maybe what are some things I can do that would draw in a solution. So maybe my local shelter, I feel like, doesn't have enough publicity. So maybe there's something I can do poetry-wise that starts connecting more publicity with it. Maybe we do a weekly show at a shelter, you know, or maybe we do a live stream, you know, or maybe we, with every, you know, adoption, they get a poetry book or something like that, you know, whatever it may be. But my goal is I'm trying to tackle that publicity issue through poetry.
Yeah, that would be good. I also think like being able to really be creative about how you are communicating your messages, like across like these different seemingly unrelated like paradigms, right? Like poetry, pet adoption, like these pet adoption, and then being more specific when it comes to cats, or like really just anything. Really, like that takes some, you know, sitting down and really getting creative with like how you can communicate across all those platforms, because there's like several types of events and like poems and books and subsections of the internet that are like really primed for like that exact type of audience.
Yeah. So again, just kind of, I think, summarize is just the more you're able to go in on that individual, in that individual's experience, rather than focusing on kind of the masses and the large group, the more you can create an experience that specific individual person is truly going to enjoy and see the attention to detail on. And the more we're going to get an understanding of how that person operates. And if it resonates with that one person, there's a great chance that, while it may not resonate with everyone, there's another person out there that will also resonate with. And that's how we build, kind of one person at a time.
One person at a time. Heck yeah.
All right, guys. We'll be back next week with another edition of Arts and Offers. Once again, my name is Geoff.
I'm Matthias.
Thanks for hanging out with us, sir. We will see you guys later. We have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon.